It is July 1st, 2024. And if you saw President Biden's performance at last week's debate, then you're probably among the people wondering who in the world is running this country right now, because it certainly was not that guy on stage. Now, if you've been paying attention, you've known that for a little while now. But the moral of the story is that now the conversation has transitioned into, okay, is Biden going to still be the Democratic nominee going up to November? And if he does bow out of the contest, well, is he still going to be the president up until next January? Could we see the 25th Amendment invoked against him? And of course, what does all of this mean for the upcoming election? How it impacts the actual policies that we have here in the United States that we are relying on the presidential candidates to be talking about, right? They're supposed to be talking about their economic policies and their foreign policies and the things that they promise to bring to the table, instead of just this conversation that we're currently having right now about whether our current sitting president is able to stay in office. We discussed all of that and more earlier with a special guest, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Kim Iversen, a journalist and the host of the Kim Iversen Show on Rumble. Kim, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to get your take on the latest here. It's been quite an interesting week, and it is certainly not looking good for Joe Biden after last week's presidential debate, where the entire world got to see his current state on full display. Now you even have liberal mainstream talking heads saying it's time for a replacement, but it seems like Biden's own family, mainly his wife Jill and his son Hunter, they're really pushing him to stay in the race. How do you view the current state of things when it comes to Biden and his 2024 bid?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly abusive, would be the one word I would use to describe what's going on here. Abusive on all levels. First of all, it's extremely abusive in my mind for his wife to be continuing to cart him around. I mean, this is just for her own look. Who wants to give up the White House? Who wants to give up the parties, the decorations, the trips, the lifestyle that the White House has brought Jill Biden now as first lady rather than second lady? What is it? What is the vice president? Is that second lady? Is that?
I think so.
I believe nobody ever
sounds
really
right
refers,
to me.
Yeah, nobody ever refers to the vice president's wife. I think it's the second lady of the United States or something. But anyway, I mean, it's a very different experience for her, and she's enjoying it. And I don't think she wants to give it up. I mean, they spent 8 years under the Obama administration there. They've been there. Obviously as Joe being a senator and then as a vice president and now as president. And Jill wants a 2-term presidency for her husband. It's clear. He's obviously not able to do it. And he hasn't been able to do it for a long time. I mean, even after that debate, she had to help him down off the stage. He is just unfortunately, and it happens to people, they get old. He's gotten old. It's nothing against him. He had to be walked off the debate stage. They're carting him around. He's not in a fit state to actually continue going on, and that's obvious. I mean, is he far gone? Is he totally gone mentally? Of course not. But he's slow mentally now, and he has to process things. And this is totally normal for somebody his age to not quite remember, be a little slow, need to take some time. And we just can't have somebody running the country who's in that state of mind. He should be napping and eating his ice cream and watching YouTube videos. That's what he should be doing all day. And of course, Hunter Biden has his own reasons for wanting his dad to stay in the White House. This is what they're showcasing, is that they are the crime family that the Republican side continues to paint them as. That this is criminal to do this to an elderly person who really should just be relaxing and enjoying his final years at home in his fancy house that he's bought. It's also abusive from the Democrats. This is not the first time. It's not like Joe Biden got into a car accident and suddenly he's the way that he is. Or it's not like he suddenly had a stroke and he was fine last week and then suddenly he's not, right? They've known that he's been in this mental decline for quite some time. They've been watching it unfold. They're closer to him. They've seen it, and they've abused him. They've abused him by keeping him there so that they could be the puppet masters behind the scenes, pulling the strings, making all of the decisions that we didn't even elect. We didn't elect these people, and they're making all of the decisions. So we've got a highly abusive situation, not only abusive to Joe Biden, abusing his cognitive decline and his age and his status by his family and the Democrats, but it's also abusive to the American people. We've got a rogue government. We don't even know who's running the government. It's clearly not Joe Biden. Who's running the government? So we're all victims. Everybody's a victim in this, and it's all just for the establishment elite, the Democratic establishment elite, to continue maintaining power. And I think the only reason why they're now just stepping up and saying anything is because, quite frankly, I think the only decision Joe Biden is making that they're not quite in line with together in lockstep is on Israel. That's it. That's the only topic. Every other topic, Joe Biden has served the Democratic establishment well. So why would they want to get rid of him? Which is why they've never said anything up until now. Suddenly, they've known he's been in mental decline this whole time, but suddenly they're like, oh, Joe's not fit. We have to get rid of Joe. What are we going to do? They've known this the whole time. The only difference is now they've got a lot of Democrat voters who are highly supportive of Israel. Most of the Jewish population in the United States votes Democrat. We've got a lot of billionaire backers of Israel and the movement who vote Democrat, donate to the Democratic Party, and they're unhappy with the Democratic Party right now. So that's the only thing I could think of that is causing them to suddenly say, oh, Joe's not fit. They've been covering for him the whole time. Whenever Republicans would point it out, Joe's not fit, he's stumbling, he's bumbling, he's falling down, Democrats would just wave it away as nothing. And they could have easily waved this debate away as nothing, but they came out in unison like a coup. It was a coup. Yeah. And now you've got his family saying it's a coup, which I don't blame the family, right? I blame them. But I also don't blame them for recognizing it's a coup. It's an obvious coup that the Democratic establishment is now doing, and the family trying to shield him from that. But they're not helping him, because the best thing for him personally, whether there's the coup going on or not, is for his family to encourage him to be a one-term president. They say, you've done a good job, Joe. Feed him all the stuff they want to feed him, and then all the pats on the back and the attaboys, and then have him retire. But I think they're fighting back against the obvious coup, and it's just abusive.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, even just Jill Biden, right after that debate, she's sitting there and she goes, oh, you answered every question. You did so good. And it's like, if you have a family member who's a little older, in their 80s, and clearly they're experiencing mental decline, you would think that his family, that they would be the first people to say, hey, let's not drag him through this. Let's not, torment him for the rest of this year, another 4 years, whatever that is going to include. And as you pointed out there, I know that that's something that more Americans are kind of realizing is this man is not running our country. So then who is, right? Who is the person who is behind kind of waving the wand on that one? And it was also kind of raised the question too, okay, if Joe Biden drops out of this race and he decides he's not running, can he still make it to the end of the year? Is he still going to finish out this term? You already have House Speaker Mike Johnson raising the possibility of invoking the 25th Amendment. Do you think that it could get to that point, or is this just kind of about Democrats, trying to get their way to November?
No, it will get to that point. They'll have to. They've all been screaming in unison now that he's not fit for the presidency. They have no other option. If Joe Biden doesn't step down, they have to 25th Amendment the guy, or they have to let him lose. I don't think they're going to go down that road. I think they would 25th Amendment him. And that's, again, another reason why Jill and Hunter, whatever their motivation, I think they have dual motivations. I think it's lifestyle and of the rich and famous, and Hunter, being Hunter and benefiting off of his dad. But I also think they are trying to fend off the obvious coup that is happening. Suddenly, the Democrats have turned on Joe because they want to get rid of him. But in their attempts to shield him, they're only going to make it worse. And they're only going to make the legacy of his presidency, if they cared about him, they're only going to make that where it's going to be stained forever if he gets removed using the 25th Amendment. I don't know if they will, that might be the last threat, that when the Democrats sit down, when Obama goes and sits with Joe and says, and Jill, really, when Barack Obama sits Jill down and says, Jill, they're going to 25th Amendment him. Like, do you want this to be the legacy? Then he'll probably bow out. So I think they'll use it as a weapon to get him to concede. But it just depends on how reasonable Jill and Hunter are on that, because they're the ones that are controlling their dad. and he's doing whatever they want to make them happy. And he, I'm sure, also enjoys being president of the United States. Who wouldn't, right?
Right.
So, but they really don't have a choice at this point with everything they've been saying. But to get it, last resort would be 25th Amendment. The guy, I can't believe that they've allowed it to get this far. I knew they were going to replace him, but I didn't. And I've known for at least a year that they were going to swap Joe out. But I
Mhm.
didn't think they would go down this disgraceful road. I didn't think that they would shame him like this. And I mean, really just humiliate him. And I don't like the guy, and he deserves to be humiliated on a lot of different topics, but topics that are deservedly like war and the his family enriching themselves. I mean, there's plenty of other things that we could get Joe Biden for throughout his career as a politician. But to get the
Mhm.
guy for old age, which everybody goes through, which many people experience, it just goes to show how corrupt they are, that that's the reason why they would finally remove somebody is old age, and shame him over old age rather than his actual record. That's what I would prefer to see happen. I think it's really disgraceful to go after somebody for this reason. So they're going to have to. Then Kamala gets in.
Mhm.
If we do the scenario of the 25th Amendment, Kamala gets in. Then I think they're going to do. Kamala's not popular, so she won't be the nominee. It's not a guarantee that she would then be the person that they run against Trump. I think what they would do is an open convention, essentially, and they would have their 5 or 6 contenders. I know Governor Gretchen Whitmer is trying to really heavily push herself. You've got Gavin Newsom, of course. You have I'm sure there's like a whole slew of Democrats who are like vying for that spot that would be decided upon by the Democratic elite at the convention. But yeah, I mean, it's what a shame. I have such mixed emotions on it because I think Joe Biden deserves um he deserves no glory. In my
Mhm.
mind, he deserves no glory and no honor for his track record, just like hardly any of the politicians in Washington deserve any glory. But I do think this is just a super shameful way and humiliating way to go about this.
Yeah, and like you were saying, I mean, we've known that his mental decline was getting pretty bad. We've known the state that he was in, but yet at every turn, we've been told by the White House or Karine Jean-Pierre, right? She's saying, oh, those are cheat fakes that are going around on the
Right.
internet. That's not actually real. So we're literally told what you're seeing from Biden, don't believe that. And then after one debate, then they come along and they're like, all right, yeah, it's time. I mean, you literally had the New York Times editorial board the morning after the debate publishing an op-ed titled "To Serve His Country, President Biden Should Leave the Race." So it's very clear that they have all been in lockstep, and then all of a sudden they have flip-flopped. Now,
Right.
I know that raises the question of, okay, if not Biden, then who? And I thought it was interesting. CNN published an article with the title Democrats fear replacement scenarios as much as keeping Biden, right? They're in a position of going, okay, well, if it's not going to be Joe Biden, then who is it actually going to be? And it almost seems like, at least looking at the last 2 elections, the Democrats' focus has been so much on, okay, we need to beat Trump, that it hasn't been on, okay, let's build up a figure that you would actually vote for. I mean, in 2020, Joe Biden was kind of that old faithful. He was a part of the Obama administration. Americans were told, oh, you can trust this guy. Do you think that that is going to end up being a mistake on their end, especially as they're now scrambling to get someone who Democrats are actually going to get out and vote for?
Yeah, they're the most undemocratic Democratic Party, aren't they? I mean, they're so afraid of the democratic process. They believe they're saving democracy by that they need to save it by preventing it. They're like, we can't give the voters a choice because if they do, they're going to destroy democracy. Like they're so warped in their minds on what should happen. They no longer listen to the people. They think they know better than us. They're snobs, and they've ruined it because they won't listen to the voters. So they don't have a single figure that people would rally behind. Unlike the Republican Party, I do think that there are several people within the Republican Party who are up and coming, rising, that people on the right in the Republican, the Republican voter base really likes them, or the populists really like them, and maybe the elite don't. But they have quite a few popular figures, I think, on the Republican side But on the Democratic side, yeah, their only focus hasn't been on championing ideas for the people, but it's been on championing ideas that are just against Donald Trump and against Republicans. And that has created a complete void of any sort of, I mean, I can't think of the only person I could think of that kind of even somewhat it would be like AOC, the squad, right? The squad still, as much as I disagree with a lot of what they bring forward, because I do think they're quite authoritarian. And that's after once supporting them. I once loved AOC and thought she really would maybe be the change for the Democratic Party, only to watch her get swallowed up and swallowed up by, I think, the fame and the glitz of it, and the, you know, the Vogue covers and the parties, and then also I think she got swallowed up with authoritarianism. I think that the Democratic Party, there's something about the brain of Democrats and the policies of Democrats that have led them down the path of, we need to force people into behaving. We need to force people into doing the right thing. People won't do the right thing. We have to force them to do it. Mm-hmm. I think that's actually like a platform ideology. You know, like when you look at Republicans and their ideology, it's typically, now you get, of course, you got the conservative religious wing of the Republican Party that doesn't think like this, but the policy stances of Republicans in general is less government, right? Less big brother, less government. That's what they're looking for. Democrats, on the other hand, liberals in general, left-wing policies in general, typically are government to save from the big corporations. That's kind of been the guiding, like, corporations, capitalism will run amok. And there is truth to that. But then they say, so then in order to combat that, we have to regulate it. Government needs to, as if government is like the benevolent creature and corporations are all bad. Right? When both can, you know, there's bad government and bad corporations, and there's not very many good governments, but there are some good corporations sometimes, depending on the leadership, right? But yeah, I mean, so their whole ethos. So other than the squad, I don't know if there's any other rising stars. And the squad is so deeply unpopular with so many people that they have a difficult time getting elected, certainly in a general. Whereas I think that the Republican side has a lot more popular figures that actually appeal to the independents, the 51% of America who are independents. I don't know if the squad appeals to any of the 51% of the independents that are out there, is my point. I think they're rising figures. They're popular. People like them, but in their crowd, they're inspiring in their crowd. They're fighters within their crowd, but not outside of their crowd. So the Democrats have just done a really crap job. And their whole focus is, we got to control. Again, it's that control in order to give you what's best.
Right.
And I don't know who that is. I really don't know who they think they can swing in there. I mean, but anybody, including Kamala Harris, would be better than a feeble-minded Joe Biden. I mean, anybody who's clearly thinking, a clear thinking person, would be better than Joe Biden at this point, unfortunately. Even the worst of the worst would be better than an unthinking Joe Biden, because we just can't have an unthinking president, or a non-thinking or incapable of thinking or a confused president. We just can't.
Yeah, it's almost, I mean, it's terrible to think, oh, we've got another presidential debate coming up, right? To think of him going through that again. It seemed like even Trump was kind of taken aback, right? Like even Trump was a little bit more reserved, because he was realizing, oh, this is who I'm actually dealing with here. Now, when it comes to some of the top contenders that we're looking at, I thought it was interesting. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is now warning, according to Politico, that the Biden campaign, or rather, she is warning the Biden campaign, excuse me, that her state is no longer winnable. And they're making this sound like, oh, it's because of Biden's debate performance. But I look at this and I'm going, wait a second. No, there was a lot of pushback in Michigan because of Biden's support for Israel, his refusal to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. And it doesn't seem like, with a lot of these Democratic contenders that are being thrown around, that you're getting anyone who really is a foreign policy, don't know if champion is the right word for it, but they're well versed in foreign policy. It doesn't seem like there's much of that there. Do you think that that could end up hurting the Democratic Party when you still have a lot of voters that are saying, "Hey, this is an issue I really care about, and I don't even think this is something that is on, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom's radar"?
Yeah, we don't have anybody who is just saying less war. We don't want to be spending all this money on wars. We've got enough problems here in this country that we need to solve, and you guys aren't solving those problems. We've got homelessness and mental health crisis and drug addictions, and we've got some serious, serious problems that we need to be dealing with. And you guys are just championing more money to Ukraine, endless, and we have to remember Ukraine is still right now the number one recipient of aid at this point right now. I mean, Israel has been historically year after year after year, but Ukraine right now is still taking a giant chunk of the money. And that is a totally unwinnable war. Not only that, but we've got Azov battalion essentially controlling that war as of right now. Zelensky got rid of the general recently at the behest of the Azov battalion. The Azov battalion has told him, don't you dare actually try to come to an agreement on this. We will not allow for a single Russian to have any of our territory, blah, blah, blah. The Azov, and they're basically saying to Zelensky or else. So there's a coup that has already happened inside of Ukraine under the radar. A military coup has taken over. Zelensky's no longer in charge. It's the Azov battalion. And yet we're funneling. And then what did we do? We lifted up the restrictions on the Azov battalion because they're the ones who are really, truly in charge. It's an underground, under the surface military coup that has happened and Zelensky, there's no elections. It's a true coup that has happened in Ukraine. And we're funneling all the money there. So we've got that situation going on. We've got not a single Democrat saying we need peace. We need to end this. We've got a real problem in Ukraine, a corruption problem. Now a military coup, a silent military coup has happened. And Ukrainian men are being literally kidnapped off the street to be thrown onto the front lines. It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. And Putin coming out being like, maybe we should end this because he's got a little bit of compassion for his Ukrainian brothers, right? He's like, this is ridiculous. This is getting ridiculous. But we've got that issue. We've got Israel sucking now on the brink of more war, right? They're trying to widen that war out. They've even now got they've passed and the Supreme Court there has ruled that the Haredi men who never fight, they're against fighting, they're against conscription. Now they could get conscripted into war. And they're all protesting. So they're trying to line up more men for battle in Israel. And we've got not a single Democrat, once again. I mean, in the Democratic Party, there's at least some dissent on Israel, as there is on the Republican side, too. But the Democrats are still not paying. And even if, there's a huge swath of Americans who maybe agree with Ukraine and maybe they agree with Israel and they support those countries, but they don't want to really support them. They support them morally and ethically. They're like, yeah, I'm on the side of Israel, but I don't want to give them any money. And there's no Democrat representing that group of people who are saying, we got $10 cartons of eggs being sold at the grocery store and chickens are through the roof. You can't get a roasted chicken anymore for $5. You got to, they're 10, $11 or whatever, at least where I live. So people are suffering and we're funneling all the money away, and Democrats just champion all of this. They don't care about the people at all. I don't know what they champion that actually matters to people.
Yeah, thinking about all of the conversation that's been so focused on Biden and Biden's health, it's like, well, we're talking about that. We're not talking about the actual platform, the policies that the American people want to see from a presidential candidate. And it'll certainly be interesting to see what they end up deciding, how long Biden sticks around. But I really
even the fact that you have to say that, I mean, just listen to that. Well, we'll see what they decide, right? I mean, they don't care about voters. Oh, we'll just wait to what the Democratic elite decide, and then we're all stuck with it. I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. It's at least the Republican Party had a primary. Nikki Haley put up a fight. As much as I don't like her, she's worse to me than any of them. But at least they allowed that, and they allowed her to put up a fight, and she still lost. Trump won, but there was that, and the Democrats have done everything they can to strangle democracy, all in the name of protecting democracy. And here we are. Well, so yeah, you're right. We will just wait and find out what they decide.
Yeah, certainly a lot at stake here. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest. Kim Iversen, a journalist and host of the Kim Iversen Show. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And y'all, we are so close to 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you are watching on YouTube, please take a moment to make sure that you are subscribed to my channel. This is a big milestone that I have been trying to hit for a while now, and I'm so excited to finally be almost there. We are so close. And if you're watching this video on any of the other many platforms I post on, such as Rumble, Rockfin, Minds, Telegram, or Twitter, or X, then also be sure that you're subscribed there as well. That is so helpful. So thank you for all of your support. And if you want to get an email in your inbox reminding you every time that I post a video, along with the description for it, if it's a longer form video, I'll also include the sources in that one. If you want that sent directly to you, then make sure that you are signed up to my Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. You can also support my work by joining my community on Patreon. That's where you can sign up as a monthly paid subscriber and join the group there. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.